In this demo, we will learn how we can use information from the token in our controllers. The API is up and running. I put a breakpoint on the action to get a list of points of interest. And what you see lined up here on screen is the request to get that list of points of interest. The authorization header is still there with a valid token. So we should hit the breakpoint when I click send. And that is indeed the case. Using user information is easier than you might think. On controller base, a user object is exposed. That user object is of type claims principal, and it contains one or more claims identities. In other words, an identity described by a set of claims. Let's put that in the watch window. There we go, that'll make it easy to watch. This claims identity here is constructed from the claims contained in the token. This automatically happens, so we don't have to do anything for this. By calling into user.claims or by fetching the first identity and calling claims on that, we can effectively get to those claims. If you look at the values, we see our user ID, my first name, last name, city, and all the other claims from the token. So this could be a very short demo, but we're actually going to do something with this. We could say that, for example, only someone who lives in a certain city is allowed to access points of interest from that city. As an example, I'm only going to do this in the action to get a list of points of interest for a city. Within the action, here we look for the city claim. As you remember, that's the name we gave to the claim when we constructed the token. Now, I realize that city names tend to be reused across the world, so this isn't a foolproof example. It would have been better if we had an ID, but for demo purposes this will do. So we access the user's city claim and get the value. We're going to test whether the name we got matches the city ID from the URI. We don't have a way to do that yet. So let's add an action to our repository. First, let's add it to the repository interface. We'll name it city name matches city ID. It accepts the city name and the city ID. And on our repository, we implement it. It's a pretty straightforward implementation. We try to find a matching city by calling into any async, and that will return true if we find a match and false otherwise. Back to our points of interest controller. Here we execute the method. And if this evaluates to false, we return forbid. That results in a response with a 403 status code. This means that the user is authenticated, but doesn't have access nevertheless. Let's give that a try. I'm going to get rid of the breakpoint here. We don't need that anymore. And in Postman, let's send a request. We're sending a request to the city with ID 1. That's New York, but in the token, the city value is Antwerp. So we should get back a forbidden status here. And that is indeed the case. We get back a 403 forbidden. The city with ID 2, that's Antwerp. So this time, access should be allowed. And that is indeed the case. So far, so good. Let's continue by looking into authorization policies.